There are some absolutely huge changes to FPL coming over the next couple of weeks, including almost all of the big hitting players. So I'm here today to help you navigate the next few weeks and make sure the green arrows keep coming. Hey everyone, I'm Sam, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. Today, in this video, I'm going to be taking you through a number of the most crucial FPL players over the next few weeks and what we need to do with them in our teams, because there's a lot of big hitting players that need to go and a lot of big hitting players that might or might not need to come in over the next few weeks. Now, Mo Salah is a great starting point here because after game week 20, he goes off to the African Cup of Nations with Egypt, where we'd expect him to be out for a few game weeks. That means from game week 21 onwards, we're probably going to have to deal without Mo Salah for at least a few weeks. Now, there's a possibility that he might only be out for game week 21 if Egypt crash out in the first round of the tournament, so in the group stages. Now, if that happens, he could be back feasibly for game week 22. Although Egypt being a very strong team, I'd expect them to get to probably the quarters, if not the semis and beyond, which means that we're looking at game week 23 as probably a minimum, and then if they go all the way, then game week 24 is probably going to be affected too. So we could be without Mo Salah for up to 4 game weeks. As you can see, Bournemouth starting it off would have been a nice fixture for him, but we're going to have to make do without him. Now, I'll be going through players to replace him over the next few weeks, but for now, I think it's crucial to know that you need to have a plan to get rid of him. He's not the only player to be affected, and there are other big hitters going off to international tournaments in the next few weeks. So let's have a look at another key hitter now, and then we'll talk about what we need to do with the money from both of them. So there are going to be plenty of other players that miss out over the next few game weeks because of AFCON and the Asia Cup. But the other big hitter in a lot of our teams is Son Heung-min. Owned by almost 50% of FPL managers, it's likely that he's going to be in a good proportion of the teams of people watching this video right now. So much like Mo Salah, you probably need to have a plan to get rid of him, or if you're very, very fortunate, hold him on your bench for a few game weeks. I personally would be looking at getting rid of both of them because it looks likely that they'll both be out for 3 or 4 game weeks. So with Son and the Asia Cup in mind, it's an ever so slightly different timeline, but only by like a day. So it will be game week 21 that he's gone from. And then again, because he's playing for a pretty strong team, South Korea, around 6-1 to win the tournament. So they are expected to go fairly deep in the tournament too, which means that he will likely be out for around the same amount of time as Mo Salah, probably game week 23 or 24, and then he'll be back by game week 25. So we're going without him for 3 or 4 game weeks. It's a lot of money to have saved up on your bench with a player that's not playing for a few game weeks. And even though we have probably got quite a bit of value tied up in him, I think there are enough other upside worthy players for 3 or 4 game weeks, and it's a long enough stretch to make you want to spend that money. Now, crucially, I don't think spending the money all in midfield is necessarily the whole answer here. There are other ways that maybe we can mix up spending the money, but there is one midfielder in particular that I think over this stretch of games is going to be really important to get into our teams. So let's take a look at him now. So it's important to note that I'm recording this before the game week 19 fixture for West Ham has taken place. So we don't know if he gets injured tonight, then that would be incredibly unfortunate for this video. But obviously you can just skip this section. Jarrod Bowen, for me, is probably the pick in midfield to replace both Son or Salah over the coming game weeks after game week 20 is out the way. I wouldn't be selling them this week unless you absolutely had to maybe get Haaland back in. And again, I'd probably only do that for free, but more on that in my team selection video later on this week. But with Jarrod Bowen in mind, from game week 21 onwards, Sheffield United and Bournemouth, 2 of the fixtures that Salah and Son will be away for, are looking really good for West Ham. So those are 2 great fixtures. Yes, Man United and Arsenal after that aren't amazing, but we know Jarrod Bowen's away form is sensational. Man United do concede a lot of goals still, so I wouldn't be worried about game week 23. And then there's all the chance that either one of Son or Salah will be back by game week 24. So you can look at getting rid of him then if you don't fancy that Arsenal fixture. The data's fantastic fantastic. He's getting a ton of goals. He's already broken the 100-point barrier this year, which is fantastic. Jarrod Bowen, for me, is probably the first midfielder I'd have lined up to replace those two from next week on. But next week, I'll be doing a full watch list video on a number of midfielders. I think 8 or 9 fantastic midfielders that I'd have as options to replace Son and Salah. So do make sure you're subscribed and you are checking out that video next week ahead of game week 21, because I'll be running through all of the options in full detail then. So another big hitter that we really need to talk about, and I think all of our transfers pretty much depend on whether we hear about Erling Haaland's fitness ahead of game week 20 or not. Now, he didn't even make the bench last night against Everton away from home. That didn't seem to matter to City, obviously beating them 3-1. But it was important what Pep came out and said in the press conferences around the game. Now, he said that he still hasn't made a full training session. He doesn't know when he'll next be fit, and it's a day-by-day thing. He gets a word from the doctors, who's fit, who's not fit at the start of every single day. He did say, though, that he expects him to hopefully be back in January. Now, crucially, that Sheffield United fixture in game week 20 is in December, not January. So I think it's fairly safe to assume that he won't be involved in that game. And even if he pulls off a miracle and he is fit, then we might not even get any sort of other news ahead of the deadline other than what Pep's already said. So I don't think many managers are going to be brave enough to buy him based on the quotes last night. If you've already got him in your side, I think you'd probably just about hold on to him. But if you haven't got him yet, there's a big decision to be made about when you're going to bring him back in. Now, earlier on in this video, I talked about Salah and Son both going in game week 21. I would personally put that down as an ideal replacement time to bring Haaland back in, using the money that you're going to save from both Salah and Son. If you've only got one of them, then I'm sure you're saving 6, maybe 5 million from Salah downgrading, or 3 or 4 from Son. And that will get you most of the way to upgrading one of your forwards to Haaland in game week 21. Now, you could do it in game week 20. I would, if you're going to do that sort of move, then Salah is probably the more obvious player to sell because it's easier to make the funds up. And Jarrod Bowen has a great fixture against Brighton this week as well. So you could look at maybe selling Salah a week early against Newcastle at home, which is pretty risky. Get Bowen, downgrade that position, and then upgrade to bring in Haaland up front. Now, personally, that's a move that I was eyeing up, but given Newcastle's away form and the fact that Haaland hasn't been given any sort of green light for the go-ahead against Sheffield United, I'm probably going to hold off for a week. But I think we're looking at Haaland back probably in January, and the fact that we're selling Salah and Son around that time as well means that we should have the money to bring him back in then. For the time being, though, until we hear more news, I'm probably going to hold off on buying him for just another week. So depending on the kind of news that we get on Erling Haaland over the next week or so, Julian Alvarez is going to become more and more interesting. If Haaland sounds like he's going to be out for a longer period of time, obviously, given Pep's quote saying hopefully January, that might mean he's not even back in January. I personally think he will be, by the way, but in case he's not, and if we get any sort of news that he's going to be out for a longer period of time, then Alvarez will become more and more popular because he's going to be playing in that centre-forward role. His data's increasing week on week. Over 0.5 XGI per 90 is decent enough as it is anyway. He's obviously a very good price at 6.8 million. And if we don't get any news on Haaland over the next couple of weeks, then Sheffield United and Burnley in 2 of the next 3, both at home, are great games. And as we saw last night, he's on penalties as well. So I think he will gain a lot of popularity over the next week or so if we don't get any definitive answer on Haaland. Personally, I wouldn't be jumping into him until we know that Haaland's out for a longer period of time, because otherwise I think it's just a transfer waiting to happen. I will asterisk this by saying if we don't hear anything about Erling Haaland and we have a bit of mystery surrounding when he's going to be back, I probably wouldn't bother buying Alvarez, because the second Haaland is back, he becomes second fiddle again, will drop deeper and maybe even have his minutes managed with Kevin De Bruyne around the corner now. He's probably going to be fit pretty soon. So Alvarez might get his minutes managed when that all happens. But if we get definitive news that Haaland's out for a longer period of time, full steam ahead on Alvarez, great fixtures, great player as well, and I'd have no qualms whatsoever about bringing Alvarez for the next few game weeks in that instance. So I don't want to spend long on Ollie Watkins, but there is a bit of chatter around the FPL community about his recent form. Only one return in his last 5 games. So he is dipping a little bit as it stands, and his data is still good, but again, it's ever so slightly creeping downwards. The last couple of games hasn't been posting big numbers on the XG. So a few people are starting to worry whether Ollie Watkins is a good hold at the moment. I'm here to say that despite the fact that some people might be selling, I am absolutely holding. There is no way I'm getting rid of Ollie Watkins. I've done it twice this season already, and it's bitten me on the arse really badly both times. So I'm more than happy to keep him for the time being. The fixtures ahead are also amazing. So Burnley at home, Everton away, and then Sheffield United away in game week 23 are all absolutely fine to hold him for. So he's been a bit unlucky recently. Aston Villa also not quite creating him the chances at the moment, but I still back them to come good. I back Ollie Watkins to churn out the returns consistently across the season. And with the fixtures to come, there's no way I'm getting rid of him right now, especially with doubts over Haaland's fitness. So there's one more striker slot available in all of our 11s for the time being. Ollie Watkins, for me, is personally going nowhere. So we're moving on to the big hitters at the back now. And again, if we're looking at selling Mo Salah and Son next game week, then we've got a bit more money to spend in our back line and up front, of course. But if Haaland's not fit either, then money in our back line is probably the only way we're going to be able to spend it, because everyone in midfield is cheaper than the likes of Mo Salah, and almost everyone's cheaper than Son as well. So Kieran Trippier could stay in a lot of our teams if you've got him already. However, given the recent form, no returns in the last few game weeks, only 1 or 2 points per week in the last few game weeks as well. So Newcastle have been struggling. Kieran Trippier has come out publicly and said that he's struggling and his standards haven't been high enough recently. So is he a player that if you've got him already, you want to hold on to? Well, I think for the next 3 game weeks, the outlook is not looking fantastic. Liverpool, Man City and Aston Villa, I'd expect them to concede in every single one of those games. So all of a sudden, you're relying on him getting an attacking return. Now, it is important to note, as far as defenders go, he's more likely than most to get you that assist, but no goal threat whatsoever other than maybe from free kicks. One will go in at some point this season, I'm sure, but he's also sharing them a little bit with Fabian Schär. So I'm not certain that he's an easy hold at the moment, given the price. Now, yes, we'll have a lot more money spare over the next few game weeks because of Mo Salah and Son leaving. But there is one other defender out there who, despite his price, I think would be a fantastic pickup, given the fact we'll have a bit of money to spend. And Kieran Trippier isn't really hitting the heights at the moment. I would personally be looking at selling him for the next few game weeks. Yes, game week 23 and onwards is absolutely fine to hold, but it is a lot of money to just have swirling around, not getting you many points for the next 3 game weeks. And you can always buy him back later. You can always look at his form. Hopefully it improves come the time we get to game week 23. And it is important to note that Newcastle don't have as many fixtures over the next few game weeks because they aren't in Europe anymore. So they'll be able to rest between matches. They'll hopefully be able to get their strongest 11 out more consistently again, with the injuries hopefully improving. But for the time being, the fixtures are bad enough that I'd probably be looking at selling Kieran Trippier personally, and probably looking at one other player in particular. So no surprises here. I'm wrapping up the video talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I'm very happy that I bought him in game week 19. I was a little bit nervous because they were stretched at the back every now and then. It did look like Burnley could score, but he kept the clean sheet. Liverpool kept the clean sheet, and yet again, he got massive bonus points. So he is now the highest bonus point scorer in the entire Premier League this season in FPL. So even when he's not getting attacking returns, which he's got 6 of this season already, including 2 goals, he's also getting the bonus points even when Liverpool keep the clean sheet as well. So the amount of chances he's creating, the amount of routes to points he's got makes Trent a very good pickup for the next few game weeks. Newcastle at home is red on the ticker, but Newcastle away from home have been really poor. So I'd consider that a pretty fine fixture to pick him up for. And then game week 21, crucially again, when we're going to have a bit more money to spend, if you've not brought him in already and you're selling the likes of Son or Salah, you're going to have a bit more money to spend. You can bring him in ahead of Bournemouth away from home. And I wouldn't be too scared of Chelsea after that. And then Burnley in game week 24, you can hold him on to. So I think overall, he's probably a better pickup than Trippier at this point. And I think looking at him with the eye test in mind, he's in about as good a form as I've ever seen him. We'll all have a lot of money circling in our banks over the next few game weeks when we sell those big hitters. So I think the answer is more than happy to spend it on Trent for the foreseeable. And if we have to bring in Haaland, we'll probably still have the money available from selling Salah and Son anyway. So I think it's full steam ahead on Trent for me. I'm very glad I bought him recently, and I think the points are hopefully going to keep on coming. So there you have it. Those are my transfer tips ahead of game week 20. Hopefully, talking about the upcoming game weeks has been helpful to you to help with your planning. And trust me, a lot of managers are going to be caught out by this over the next couple of game weeks. So get the plans in place and you'll already have a crucial advantage over some of your rivals. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed the video today, please do remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And as always, it's very, very helpful to me as well. But for now, I hope you all have a great game week 20 and the rest of game week 19 tonight, by the way, as well. And I'll see you on the other side as we start preparing for my game week 20 with my team selection video tomorrow.